Chapter 1. The night sky stretched like an endless river of ink, but above the jagged mountains of Astralis, the darkness was alive. Ribbons of emerald and violet light rippled across the heavens, shimmering like the breath of forgotten gods. The auroras sang in a language too ancient for mortal tongues, a low, haunting hum that seemed to vibrate inside the bones of anyone who dared to listen. Aurora paused on the silver path, her boots crunching softly against frost-kissed moss. Each step left behind a faint glow, as if the earth itself remembered her passing. She tilted her head back, letting the cold wind sting her cheeks, and closed her eyes. The sound was faint but insistent, not merely wind, not merely light, a calling. She pressed a hand to her chest. The ache was there again, the hollow throb that had haunted her for as long as she could remember. It was not pain, not exactly. More like the echo of something once whole, now missing. Her grandmother had called it the ache of the veil. Some hearts, she'd whispered on nights like this, are born between worlds. They wander until they remember where they belong. Aurora had laughed then, a child's easy laugh, but the words had burrowed deep. Now, years later, the ache had sharpened into a quiet urgency. For weeks, the northern lights had burned brighter than ever, twisting into patterns that felt almost deliberate, swirls that resembled eyes, or perhaps wings. And every night she dreamed of a figure standing at the edge of a luminous curtain, his silhouette blurred by mist. She never saw his face, but when she woke, her pillow was damp with tears. Tonight, the auroras were stronger still. They bent low over the valley like a bridge of living silk, and Aurora knew without logic, without doubt, that she was meant to follow. She adjusted the strap of her satchel, pulling her cloak tighter. The silver path wound down toward a frozen lake that mirrored the lights above. Beyond it rose the Veilwood, a forest where every trunk gleamed with faint starlight, and where, according to legend, reality grew thin. Travelers claimed to hear voices there, or glimpse reflections of themselves that walked a half-second out of sync. Some returned with hair turned white. Others did not return at all. Aurora's boots crunched on the frost as she descended. The air smelled of pine and something sweeter, an unfamiliar scent, like rain on warm stone. She thought of the locket hidden beneath. Her scarf, a small brass circle engraved with a name she could not read. It had been her mother's final gift, pressed into her palm on the day of her disappearance. One day, her mother had said, voice trembling, "This will lead you home." Home. The word felt strange on her tongue. She had lived in villages, in mountain cabins, even in the great trade city of Delrune, but none of them had ever felt like home. Perhaps because home was not a place. Perhaps it was a person. A faint chime rang out across the frozen lake. Aurora froze. It sounded like a bell no, like a single note of music plucked from a harp. The sound shimmered in the air and faded into silence. Then another followed, softer, coaxing her forward. The ice beneath her boots glowed faintly as she stepped onto the lake. Her reflection rippled, even though the surface was perfectly still. For an instant, she thought she saw someone standing beside her, tall, broad-shouldered, a cloak of midnight blue. But when she blinked, she was alone. "Not alone," whispered a voice. The words were not spoken aloud, they blended loomed inside her mind like a thought not her own. Alira spun, heart hammering. Who's there? The auroras flared, flooding the lake with emerald light. From the far shore, a figure emerged. He walked with the measured grace of someone accustomed to silence. His cloak shimmered like the sky itself, threads of violet and silver catching the light. A hood shadowed his face, but his eyes pale as moonlit water caught hers and held them. You heard the call, he said, his voice low and steady. Few mortals do. Alira's throat tightened. Who are you? A guardian, he replied simply. The veil does not open to chance. He paused, as if weighing an invisible scale. And neither do I. The lake between them pulsed with soft light, casting faint halos around their feet. Alira took an involuntary step closer. Despite the cold, warmth radiated from him subtle, like the promise of spring hidden beneath winter soil. Why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes softened, though his expression remained unreadable. Because you remember, he said, even if you do not yet know what you have lost. A gust of wind swept across the lake, carrying with it a flurry of silver frost. For a heartbeat, the auroras bent lower, almost touching the surface. The figure lifted his hand, and the lights responded, twisting into a spiral of green fire that framed him like a living halo. Alira felt her breath catch. The ache in her chest flared, no longer a hollow pain, but a sharp, desperate pull, like a magnet finding its counterpart. Will you cross? The guardian asked softly. Beyond lies the veil. Dreams, memories, and truths you have forgotten. But every step has a cost. Alira hesitated, her pulse a trembling drum. She thought of the villages she had left behind, the meaningless jobs, the nameless yearning that haunted every waking hour. She thought of the locket and the dreams of a face she could not see. She stepped forward. The ice beneath her glowed brighter, as though the lake itself approved. The guardian extended his hand. I am Kaelin, he said. Alira, she replied, her voice a vow and a question all at once. And as their fingers met, the auroras flared into a curtain of living light, swallowing the world in a brilliance that felt like the beginning of everything. Chapter 2. Light swallowed the lake, then thinned to a shimmer. When Alira opened her eyes, the frozen surface was gone. She stood on a narrow path of pale stone, each slab glowing faintly, as if lit from within. Overhead, the auroras unfurled into endless ribbons of color greens and blues, streaks of silver and faint rose, twisting into shapes that defied reason. The air smelled of rain and pine, but also of something sweeter, starlight warmed by memory. Kaelin's hand lingered around hers, warm and steady. The crossing is never the same for two travelers, he said quietly. It shows what your heart most needs to see. Alira glanced around. This isn't the world I left. No, he agreed. This is the veil, a bridge between what was, what is, and what might be. Few mortals walk here. Fewer still return unchanged. The words should have frightened her. Instead, they settled into her like a long-awaited truth. Ahead, the path wound toward a forest of towering trees. Their trunks shone like polished moonstone, their leaves flickering with colors that shifted as she breathed, violet one moment azure the next. A low hum pulsed through the air, deep and resonant, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. "Will it hold us?" she asked, staring at the luminous ground. Kalen's mouth curved in the faintest suggestion of a smile. "The veil will hold what it chooses. For now, it chooses you." They began to walk. Each step left a soft footprint of light that faded behind them. Alira's senses felt sharpened, her awareness stretching outward in ways she couldn't explain. The distant rustle of leaves sounded like a chorus of whispered names. The faint breeze against her cheek carried a melody she almost recognized. "What are you?" she asked after a while, her voice soft but insistent. "Guardian, spirit, something else." Kalen was silent for several paces. "I am bound," he said at last, "to protect the threshold, to guide those who are called." Called for what? For remembrance. He glanced at her, and in his pale eyes she saw a depth that made her chest tighten. There was age there, centuries of watching, waiting, guiding. But beneath the age flickered something unmistakably human. "You carry a memory," he continued, "a thread that belongs to both worlds. That is why you heard the call." Alira touched the locket beneath her cloak. Its metal pulsed faintly, warm against her palm. "My mother gave this to me," she murmured. "She said it would lead me home." Kalen slowed, eyes narrowing slightly as he studied the locket. "May I?" She hesitated, then nodded. He reached out, fingertips brushing the brass surface. At his touch, the engraving flared with silver light, revealing lines of script too intricate for mortal language. The glow pulsed once, twice, before fading. "This is no ordinary keepsake," Kalen said softly. "It is a key." "A key to what?" His gaze lifted to the path ahead. "To the truth of who you are." They walked on, the silence between them deep, but not uncomfortable. Alira's thoughts swirled with questions, but none seemed urgent enough to break the fragile stillness. As the forest thickened, she noticed shapes moving between the trees, flickers of pale light that darted and vanished. At first she thought them fireflies, but when one drifted close, she saw a tiny face no bigger than a coin, eyes luminous as dew. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "They are echoes," Kalen said. "Fragments of memory left behind by travelers. The veil keeps what the world forgets." One of the echoes hovered near her shoulder, its light soft and warm. Alira felt a sudden, inexplicable ache in her chest, an image flashing across her mind. A child's laughter, a garden of silver flowers, a voice calling her name. When she reached out, the echo flitted away like a startled bird. Kalen watched her carefully. "Do not chase what is not ready to be remembered. The veil reveals in its own time." She nodded, though her heart yearned to follow. The path opened onto a clearing bathed in pale gold. At its center stood a pool of still water, so clear it mirrored the sky perfectly. The auroras above seemed to gather here, their colors deepening until the water shimmered with impossible hues. "This is the Mirror Lake," Kalen said, "a place where the heart speaks." He stepped to the edge and gestured for her to follow. "Look if you dare." Alira knelt, peering into the glassy surface. At first, she saw only her reflection, wide eyes, wind-tossed hair. Then the image rippled. Another face appeared beside hers, a woman with the same dark eyes, but older, crowned with a halo of faint light, her mother. Alira whispered. The reflection smiled sadly, lips moving without sound. Alira leaned closer, desperate to hear. The water trembled, and the image dissolved, replaced by a flash of starlit sky, and two clasped hands, one hers, the other unfamiliar, but achingly familiar all the same. Alan knelt beside her, his presence grounding her. The veil shows what your soul remembers, he said. Not all visions are meant to be understood at once. Tears stung her eyes. Why can't I remember? Who was that hand? His voice softened. Because memory is a door, and doors must be opened from both sides. She turned to him, searching his face for answers. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between them. His eyes caught the Aurora's light, silver and green swirling like distant galaxies. Do you remember me? She asked before she could stop herself. Kaelin's breath hitched barely, but enough. He looked away, toward the endless forest. I remember enough, he said quietly. But some truths are dangerous before their time. Before she could press him further, a sudden wind swept through the clearing. The auroras above flickered, their colors shifting from gentle greens to urgent crimson. The echoes in the forest scattered with tiny cries of alarm. Kaelin rose swiftly, his cloak snapping in the wind. They know you've crossed, he said, his voice low and tense. Who knows? The wardens of dusk keep close to me. He offered his hand again, and though fear prickled at her skin, Alira took it without hesitation. Warmth surged through her fingers, steadier than the trembling ground beneath them. As they stepped back onto the glowing path, the wind carried a sound that made Alira's heart pound, a chorus of distant bells, soft yet insistent, like the ringing of fate itself. Chapter 3. The wind quieted as quickly as it had risen, but the air remained charged, alive with a static hum that tingled against Alira's skin. The auroras above no longer flowed in graceful ribbons. They twisted into spirals of crimson and deep violet, pulsing like the heartbeat of some vast, unseen creature. Kaelin kept her hand firmly in his stride quick, but sure as they left the clearing behind. The glowing path narrowed, winding through trees that stretched higher than before, their trunks braided with veins of silver light. Shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, shapes that moved like smoke, half-formed and restless. Who are the wardens of dusk? Alira asked, her voice low. Keepers of the old order, Kaelin said without looking back. They guard the boundaries between worlds. To them, every crossing is a trespass. Will they harm us? They will try to turn you back. They believe memory should remain where it lies. His grip tightened. But the veil called you. That gives us some protection. The path steepened, leading them toward a ridge that overlooked a vast valley. As they climbed, the trees thinned until the sky opened above them, a swirling ocean of light. Below, the valley glowed with soft blue mist, dotted with tiny floating orbs that drifted like lanterns on an invisible tide. What is this place? She breathed. The path of echoes, Kaelin said. Every orb is a memory, dreams, promises, moments of love and loss. The veil keeps what the world forgets, and sometimes what it is not ready to release. Alira stepped closer to the edge. The orbs pulsed gently, their light reflecting in her eyes. Each one seemed to carry a faint sound, A laugh, a sigh, the echo of a whispered name. She reached out toward a nearby orb, its glow a soft amber that warmed her fingertips. Careful, Kaelin warned, but the orb drifted closer, as if drawn to her. Inside it, a scene flickered to life. A sunlit meadow, a child running through tall grass, arms outstretched toward a figure waiting in the distance. Alira's breath caught. The figure turned, and though the face was blurred, she felt an aching recognition. "My mother," she whispered. The orb quivered, its light dimming as if responding to her voice. A sudden swell of longing gripped her chest, sharp and overwhelming. Before she could touch it, Kaelin placed a steady hand over hers. "Not yet," he said gently. "If you claim a memory too soon, it can consume you." Tears pricked her eyes. "But I need to know you will," he said, his tone soft but firm. "The veil reveals what you are ready to bear. Nothing more." Alira let out a shaky breath, pulling her hand back. The orb drifted away, returning to the sea of lights below. They continued along the ridge, the path winding through pockets of mist that carried faint melodies. Some sounded like distant lullabies, others hummed with a sorrow that made her heart ache. "Do you ever wish you could take one?" she asked after a while. Kaelin was silent for several steps. "Yes," he admitted, "but my duty binds me. A guardian may guide, but never claim. The veil keeps me whole by keeping me apart." Alira glanced at him, catching a flicker of something longing, perhaps hidden behind his calm exterior. "Then why help me?" His eyes met hers, silver depths shimmering in the Aurora's glow. "Because you remind me of a promise I once made." Before she could ask, a distant chime echoed across the valley. It was soft, but unmistakable, a crystalline note that vibrated through her bones. More followed, a gentle cascade of sound that formed a melody, haunting and beautiful, like a lullaby carried by starlight. "The bells of convergence," Kaelin murmured. "The veil is shifting." The orbs below responded to the sound, their lights brightening until the valley glittered like a second sky. Some rose from the mist, floating toward the path in slow, deliberate arcs. One drifted close, glowing a pale blue that pulsed in rhythm with the bells. Alira felt her heart lurch. Inside the orb, she saw herself standing beneath a tree of silver leaves, holding the hand of a man whose face remained hidden in shadow. But she recognized the shape of his shoulders, the tilt of his head. "Kaelin," her breath caught. "This is us." Kaelin's expression hardened. "Do not look too closely." "Why, what is this memory?" "It is not a memory," he said quietly. "Not yet. It is a possibility." Alira turned toward him, searching his face for answers. "Does that mean we've—" "It means the veil reflects not only what was, but what might be," he interrupted. "But every path carries a cost." The bells swelled, their music rising like a tide. The orb trembled, then burst into a shower of pale sparks that drifted around them like falling stars. One landed on Alira's palm, warm and soft, and for a heartbeat she felt Kaelin's hand over hers, not in the present, but in another time, another world where the distance between them did not exist. Kaelin exhaled sharply, breaking the spell. "We must move. The wardens will follow the sound." Reluctantly, Alira let the spark fade. They continued along the ridge, descending into a narrow canyon where the air grew warmer and the ground pulsed with faint light. The walls of the canyon shimmered like glass, reflecting not their faces, but shifting scenes of unfamiliar lives, lovers embracing, children laughing, warriors standing beneath strange stars. Aurora paused before one reflection, a woman who looked exactly like her, dressed in flowing silver robes, standing beside a figure who wore Kalen's cloak. The woman's hand rested against his chest, her eyes filled with quiet devotion. "That's me," Aurora whispered. Kalen's jaw tightened, an echo of what could be. She turned to him, heart pounding. "Is this why the veil called me?" Because you and I," his gaze softened, but he said nothing. Instead, he reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, the touch so gentle it felt like a promise. Before she could speak, a sudden gust of cold wind swept through the canyon. Shadows gathered at the far end of the path, forming into tall, hooded figures whose eyes burned with faint violet light. Kalen stepped in front of her, his cloak flaring like a shield. "The wardens," he said, his voice low and steady. "Stay behind me." The figures advanced, their movements silent but deliberate, the sound of the bells fading into a tense, echoing stillness. Chapter 4. The canyon narrowed until the walls rose like polished obsidian on either side, trapping the glow of the auroras in fractured shards of light. The wardens of dusk advanced in silent formation, their hooded figures gliding rather than walking. Their faces remained hidden in shadow, but their eyes, softly burning violet, pierced the darkness like distant stars. Kalen shifted, placing himself squarely between Aurora and the encroaching figures. The air around him thickened, vibrating with a subtle energy that raised the fine hairs on her arms. "Stay close," he murmured. The lead warden stopped a few paces away. Its voice emerged as a layered echo, many tones speaking as one. "Guardian Kalen, you break the covenant." Kalen's shoulders tightened. "I guide as I am bound to guide." "This mortal crosses without sanction," the wardens intoned. "The veil is not her path." Aurora swallowed hard but stepped forward, her voice steadier than she felt. "The veil called me. I followed the lights." The wardens turned their glowing eyes toward her, and for a moment the canyon filled with a low, resonant hum. Images flickered across the mirrored walls. Aurora as a child beneath the auroras, her mother's gentle smile, the brass locket glowing in moonlight. "She carries the key," the wardens murmured, their voices weaving like wind through hollow stone. "The key awakens what must remain asleep." Kalen's grip on her hand tightened. "The choice is hers. The veil summoned her. You have no claim." The wardens tilted their heads as one. "And if her choice unravels the binding," Kalen's eyes hardened, "then the binding must be unraveled." The canyon fell silent. The wardens regarded him for a long, unnerving moment, their violet eyes flickering like fading stars. At last, the lead figure inclined its head. "The veil watches," it said. "The cost will be hers." With a sound like rustling silk, the wardens dissolved into mist, their forms unraveling into threads of shadow that drifted upward and vanished into the aurora-lit sky. Aurora exhaled, her knees trembling. What did they mean? The cost will be mine. Kalen turned, his expression unreadable. Every crossing requires balance. To reclaim what is lost, something else must be surrendered. Her chest tightened. And you knew this. I knew the risk, he admitted. But only the veil knows the price. They stood for a moment in the charged stillness, the canyon echoing with the fatting hum of the warden's departure. Finally, Kalen took her hand again and guided her forward. The path widened, leading them out of the canyon into a valley bathed in silver light. Before them stretched a meadow of crystal flowers, each bloom glowing softly from within. Petals shifted colors with the rhythm of their footsteps, casting ripples of light across the field. A gentle wind stirred the blooms, carrying a fragrance that felt like a memory half remembered, sweet, warm, and tinged with longing. Aurora inhaled sharply. It's beautiful. This is the Heartfield, Kalen said softly. A place where truths are revealed and bonds are tested. They walked among the flowers, their soft luminescence bathing them in shifting hues. Aurora brushed her fingers against a nearby bloom. It pulsed faintly, releasing a soft chime like a bell submerged in water. What is this place showing me? She asked. That which lies deepest, Kalen replied. Desire, fear, the love you seek, and the love you fear to lose. The words settled between them like a fragile thread. Aurora glanced at him, her heart beating faster. The ache that had drawn her across worlds pulsed stronger now, no longer distant, but immediate, centered not in the path behind her, but in the man beside her. You speak as though you know what I seek, she said quietly. Kalen met her gaze, the silver light of the flowers reflected in his eyes. Perhaps because it mirrors my own. The confession hung in the air, soft but undeniable. Aurora's breath caught. In the gentle glow of the Heartfield, the distance between them felt fragile, almost imaginary. Kalen, she began, but the words faltered. He stepped closer, his presence warm and steady, like the promise of dawn after a long winter night. The veil does not summon without reason, he said. It calls hearts that are bound, even across lifetimes. Aurora's fingers tightened around the locket at her throat. Lifetimes. Kalen reached for the locket, his touch light as falling snow. This key is more than a keepsake. It is the echo of a vow made long ago, a vow between us. A rush of images filled her mind. Starlit nights beneath glowing trees, two figures standing hand in hand, a promise whispered against the roar of distant oceans. She felt the echo of a name on her lips, a word that burned with both familiarity and loss. I knew you, she breathed. In another life, Kalen said softly, before the veil claimed me as its guardian. Tears pricked her eyes. Then, why don't I remember? Because to remember is to choose, he replied. And choice demands sacrifice. Aurora's heart ached with both wonder and dread. What sacrifice? The veil does not reveal the price until the heart is ready, Kalen said, his voice thick with something like sorrow. But know this, if you claim our shared memory, the world you came from may fade. You may never return. The flowers around them dimmed slightly, their glow responding to the weight of his words. Aurora looked around at the endless meadow, the shimmering auroras above, and then back to Kalen. His eyes held both longing and restraint, a man bound by duty, yet drawn toward her with a pull neither of them could deny. "What if I stay?" she whispered. His breath hitched, almost imperceptibly. "Then you would remain in the veil beyond time. But every choice reshapes the balance. Your world would lose what you bring to it. Perhaps someone waiting for you." The thought struck like a quiet dagger. Her mother's face flickered in her mind, the blurred reflection in the mirror lake. A home she had never found, but might still exist. Kalen stepped closer, his voice barely more than a breath. "I would not ask this of you, I could not. But you want me to stay," she said. His silence was answer enough. The flowers brightened again, their glow swirling into a gentle spiral that encircled them both. The air pulsed with the quiet rhythm of two hearts beating in fragile harmony. Aurora reached for his hand. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and sure. "I don't know what I'll choose," she admitted. "You need not know yet," Kalen said. "Only listen to the veil. It will show you the path." They stood together in the luminous field, the auroras bending low as though to witness the fragile bond forming between them. For the first time since crossing, the ache in Aurора's chest softened, not gone, but gentled by the warmth of his touch. Far beyond the meadow, a faint chime sounded, a single note of pure silver that lingered in the air like a promise yet to be fulfilled. Chapter 5. The silver chime echoed through the heartfield, clearer and more insistent than before. Aurora felt it vibrate in her chest like a summons, tugging her forward. The flowers around them swayed despite the still air, their luminous petals folding inward as though bowing to an unseen presence. Kalen's hand tightened around hers. "The veil is calling. It is time." Aurora's heart quickened. "Time for what?" "For the choice only you can make." A soft glow rose at the far end of the meadow, forming a narrow arch of light. Beyond it, shadows shifted in soft blues and silvers, shapes of places she knew and did not know, as if worlds were folding together in a dream. Kalen led her toward the arch. The ground beneath them shimmered like moonlit water, each step releasing faint ripples of sound, whispers of old promises, laughter from forgotten nights, the sigh of winds that had traveled across lifetimes. At the threshold, Kalen stopped. His eyes, lit by the aurora's glow, held a quiet gravity. "Beyond this passage lies the nexus. There, the veil will reveal what it demands." Aurora swallowed. "And if I refuse, you will return to your world," Kalen said softly. "The memories will fade, the ache will quiet. You will wake beneath familiar skis and wonder forever what you left behind." His voice carried no pressure, only an aching gentleness. That, somehow, made the weight of the choice even heavier. They stepped through the arch. The nexus was a vast chamber of living light. Walls of translucent crystal rose high above, refracting the auroras into 1,000 shimmering rivers. At its center floated a single column of silver flame, burning without heat, its light pulsing with the slow rhythm of a heartbeat. As they approached, the flame shifted. Faces flickered in its depths. Her mother's warm smile, the blurred silhouette of the child in the amber orb, Kalen's own silver eyes gazing back at her with quiet longing. "Aurora," a voice murmured, not Kalen, not her own, but something vast and intimate. bearer of the key, seeker of what was lost. The balance awaits your decision. The column of flame split into two pathways of light. On the left, images of her world bloomed, her mother waiting in a meadow of golden grass, the smell of earth after rain, the steady beat of a life filled with quiet mornings and unspoken possibilities. On the right, the veil unfolded like a living dream, crystal forests, endless auroras, Kalen standing beneath the stars, his hand outstretched toward her. The voice returned, soft but resonant. One path returns you to the life you left. The other binds you to the veil and to the one whose heart echoes yours. Both require sacrifice. Alira's throat tightened. What is the cost? The flame dimmed, and the answer came as a whisper that seemed to bypass her ears and speak directly to her soul. To remain is to relinquish the world of your birth. To return is to forget the love you have found. Her heart lurched. Forget. The word cut deeper than she expected. If she returned, she would lose Kalen, not just his presence, but the very memory of him. A love erased as though it had never existed. Kalen stepped closer, his expression shadowed with sorrow and restraint. You must choose freely, he said. If you remain, the veil will claim you as it claimed me. Time will not touch you, but your old life will fade as if it were only a dream. And if I go back, her voice trembled, you'll be gone. You will forget, he said quietly, and I will remember. The thought of him carrying her memory alone, of his heart bound to a love she would no longer recall, sent a sharp ache through her chest. Kalen reached for her hand, but stopped just short of touching her. His silver eyes glimmered with a pain that mirrored her own. I would not hold you here, he whispered. Your heart belongs first to itself. Alira stepped closer, closing the distance between them until their breaths mingled. And what of your heart? She asked. A faint smile touched his lips, bittersweet and luminous. It crossed the veil long ago. It waits where you stand. Her tears blurred the shifting lights around them. S.